Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you are new, welcome to my channel. My name is Nicole, and today we are going to be discussing all of the books that I read in August of 2024. So in August, I did manage to read 8 books. My goal was to try and get to 10. I always start the month off really well and then fall short right at the end. I did not manage to read everything I put on my TBR for August. I read 5 of the 6 books, and frustratingly, the last book that I didn't manage to read, I was maybe halfway through, if that, on the 31st of August. So unfortunately, I didn't get it finished. I tried my best, but it was like a 600-page book, and I was starting it on the 30th of August. So there was not really any hope, but I had false faith in myself. Let's just get straight into all of the books that I did read in the month of August. So the first book that I read in August was one that I actually started towards the end of July, which I was hoping to finish in July, but I just didn't get there, and I took a couple days in August to finish the book, and that was Things We Hide from the Light by Lucy Score. This is the second book in the Knock 'Em Out series, the first book being Things We Never Got Over. It is a trilogy. I was saying that they were like a companion series, but they're actually not, because there is this kind of plot line that starts in the first book that does sort of weave through this one as well, and it'll obviously end in the third and final book, Things We Left Behind, which I am planning on reading in September. I rated this one 4 stars. I think I have a bit of an unpopular opinion with this one, and I actually think everyone prefers Things We Never Got Over, whereas I preferred Things We Hide from the Light. I was not really a fan of Naomi or Knox, who are the main characters. I also found like the things that they were involved in and what was happening with like this sort of like criminal gang was just ridiculous, and I didn't buy into it. And then in this book, we focus on Knox's brother, Nash, who is the chief of police in their town, Knock 'Em Out. So the criminal gang stuff that was happening in this plot line, in this series, made sense in this book because he's literally the head of the police force in this town. So it made sense that he would be investigating this stuff. We then also have our female main character, Lena, who is like a best friend of Knox. She is like a private investigator for people that insure high value items, and when they go missing, it's her job to track them down. So she ends up coming to Knock 'Em Out to try and find this car that's been stolen, and they believe the criminal gang that kidnapped Naomi and her niece, responsible for shooting Nash, has something to do with the car that's been stolen. I much preferred Lena and Nash as main characters. I feel like they were more fully fleshed out. The story was more developed. Like I said, the criminal sort of gang stuff, I don't know what to call them, but like that sort of plot line made more sense in this book because of the line of work that are Nash and Lena are in. I found the story more believable. Naomi and Knox were also, for me, a lot more likable in this book. I just don't like reading from their point of view. I really struggled to get in their heads, but I found this one a lot easier to read, and I did really quite enjoy it. But look, overall, 4 stars, did really enjoy it. The series is getting better and better for me, which is fantastic. I had a great time with this one. And then the second book I picked up was the highest rated book that I read this month, and probably the book, in all honesty, that I was looking the most forward to, and that was Business Casual by B.K. Borison. So this is the 4th and final book in the Lovelight series. The other books in the series are Lovelight Farms, In the Weeds, and Mixed Signals, which are sitting just behind me. I do actually have the special editions, yeah, there they are, of these books, an unboxing by Afterlight. I'll link it down below if you're interested in seeing it. But this focuses on Charlie and Nova. Charlie being the half brother of Stella, who is the main character from the first book and the owner of Lovelight Farms. And then Nova is Beckett's younger sister, who is the head farmer at Lovelight Farms, and his book is In the Weeds. And this book was just everything to me. I loved it. I actually think that it may be my favorite or my second favorite. I can't decide if I prefer Lovelight Farms or Business Casual. I am planning on doing a reread of this series, not this year, maybe next year, but I want to reread all 4 of them and decide which one is my favorite. It was so good. I loved Charlie. I loved Nova. Getting to see their relationship blossom was great, because these are 2 characters that obviously we knew a fair bit about Charlie because he made a lot of appearances in the Lovelight Farms, being Stella's half brother, and then Nova did make some sort of appearances in the Weeds. So it was really cool to kind of get their story. I wasn't expecting to like it anywhere near as much as I did, but I was pleasantly surprised that I did really love them, and I thought they were so cute. This is a spoiler, and I do apologize, but 2 of the main characters from one of the other books end up getting married, and he pays for them to go on a honeymoon, and whisks them away, and he decides he's going to step into their role in Lovelight Farms and help do their job whilst they're on their honeymoon. Nova is also in the process of setting up her own tattoo studio in Lovelight, and Charlie, because he does business stuff, is helping her set it up and all of that stuff, and that's how they kind of have a relationship. They have a little bit of a friends with benefits scenario, but it's very obvious that there was never friends with benefits. There was always something that more there for them. So I did rate this one 4.5 stars, and it was a perfect ending to this series, but I also like that BK Borison left it open enough that she could return back to the series at a later stage if she chooses to. Fingers crossed she does, because I would read more books in this world. It was the perfect conclusion. And then the third book that I picked up was Twisted by Emily McIntyre. This is the third book in the Never After kind of series that she's doing. They're kind of like companion series, is I think the best way to describe them. The first one was Hooked, which was a Peter Pan kind of fractured fairy tale. Then we had Scarred, which focuses on the Lion King. We then had Wretched, which was like Wicked Wizard of Oz. And then Twisted is our Aladdin fractured fairy tale. So we do focus on our main character, Yasmin. Her father is one of the richest men in the world, and he has a diamond business. And Yasmin is really wanting to step into the business, but her dad's like, no, that's not your role. I want you to marry a wealthy man who will take over the business because her father is currently dying. Her father does have a right-hand man called Julian Farashi, who's obviously meant to be Jafar. He is actually wanting to take over the business and thought he would inherit it. However, he finds out that because the father's dying, in the will it's going to go to whoever Yasmin ends up marrying. Yasmin is currently in love with one of their, I don't want to say servants, but one of their hired staff is probably a better word for it. And he comes up with this plan that basically he's going to marry Yasmin, forces her into it, and he's going to be the one that runs the family business. There's also this plot line about traveling to Egypt to find this magical lamp. I've said this before, I'm not a huge fan of kind of this dark romance style of genre. The only reason I have continued on with this series, I'm not someone that likes to DNF my books without giving them a go and trying to read them. I do find that Emily McIntyre's writing style is really easy and engaging for me to read. So I ended up reading this in one day. So they're really easy for me to read. I just don't enjoy the dark romance elements. It's not something that I enjoy reading. This is probably my second favorite out of the four. But yeah, there's like criminal gangs, there's like senseless killings, you're murdering people, and I don't think that there's any point to it except to prove that this person's bad and evil. A lot of the women in these series as well are quite naive, don't have a backbone, and I just like my women to be a bit more strong-willed and independent. These books aren't for me. The genre and the tropes are not things I enjoy, so I realistically shouldn't be picking them up because they're going to be easy for me to read, but in all honesty, I'm not going to enjoy it, especially when a lot of the times it focuses on the villain and the villain is getting with the main character, and I'm like, no, you're supposed to be getting with this main character. Also, apologies if you can hear any scratching in the background. There's a lorikeet living in my roof. I am glad that I've read this series now, but yeah, the dark romance genre is just not something that I enjoy. It's just not for me. So that's kind of my thoughts on Twisted. I rated Twisted 2 stars. And then the fourth book I read was Here for the Right Reasons by Jodie McAllister. So this is essentially a bachelor style book, but this focuses on our main character, Cece. The bachelor style show is called Marry Me Juliet. It is set in Australia, and she has cast one of the Juliets on the next season because this is also set during COVID times as well. So the little cafe or lolly store she was working for ends up letting her go because they can't afford to keep her on because of the COVID restrictions. So she ends up applying for Marry Me Juliet one night when she's really drunk, and she ends up getting accepted on the show, and she takes it because she's going to get paid. Our Romeo is called Dylan. He's an Olympic gold medalist. He's also a spokesperson for men's mental health, so that's why he has come on the show. And essentially what happens is that Cece ends up getting eliminated on the very first night. She's not good at being on camera, and he eliminates her. She ends up having like a panic attack and fainting because she realizes that she is going to be broke. The COVID restrictions have actually hit even harder at this point in the story, and the Juliets aren't actually able to leave site, so they actually put them up in Romeo's cabin and they ship him off somewhere somewhere else. So her and Dylan come up with a plan in order to keep her on the show, which is basically like making her out to be a friend for him to speak to about the Juliet's left and to help him make decisions, talk about his dates, and eventually they start to have this little blossoming relationship, but it doesn't really work out because he has to pick a girl. I gave this one 3.5 stars. It started out okay, but then it just felt like a really long slog and I didn't super enjoy it. There are an additional 2 books in this series so far. I was contemplating picking them up when I discovered that there were more and I was halfway through this book, but by the time I finished it, I realized I don't need to read any more books in this series. This was enough for me. Like I said, it just felt like it was really, really long. It just got a bit repetitive because every time a girl was eliminated, it would be like a screaming match at CC, and it felt unnecessary at times. I appreciate what the author tried to do, but I just didn't love it. So that's why I gave it 3.5 stars. And then the 5th book I picked up was King of Battle and Blood by Scarlett St. Clair. This was one that I was really excited to pick up and read. It is also in the dark romance genre. It's a bit of a romantasy, that's the word. This is also a book that's helped me realize that dark romance is not for me. So this focuses on our main character. I'm going to call it Izzy because I can never pronounce her first name. Essentially, we live in a world where there is a vampire society. They've got a vampire king, and he has decided that he wants to take over the other sort of countries, kings, lords, whatever they are in this world. Izzy's father ends up deciding to, what is the word? The white flag. I can't think of what the word is that he does. He chooses not to fight them and instead make peace and just accept the fact that they're going to conquer them, but he wants to do it peacefully and become a part of their society without having to sacrifice all of the lives of the people that he is in charge of. And instead, Adrian says, look, I'll make you an offer. Give me your daughter's hand in marriage and I will spare your town. And they agree that that's what they're going to do. For some bizarre reason, and I don't understand why, everyone in her land are pissed off at her for accepting this deal. She's literally sacrificing herself to marry the vampire king so you guys can live, and they try to kill her. Her own people tried to kill her because she failed to kill Adrian and instead slept with him on a wedding night. There were lots of plot holes, I felt like, but she ends up traveling back to his home country, his castle, and it's just about her being a part of his court, a bit more so on the love story between them and figuring out her role and everything. I kind of guessed some of the plot line. There's also like this witch plot line. I don't know, I just felt like it was all over the place. Didn't super enjoy it. I rated it 3.5 stars. I'm not going to pick up the sequel, so I'm really glad that I never bought it. It's also kind of put me off trying the rest of Scarlett St. Clair's books, and I'd rather read books that are more up my alley. So yeah, unfortunately this was a little bit disappointing for me, but I'm glad I finally read it. This is also one of the books that is on my 24 books I want to read in 2024 as well. Book 6 is Battle Royal by Lucy Parker. I gave this 2.5 stars. This book was frustrating to me. And it was frustrating to me because there were multiple plot lines going on in this book that weren't necessary. So we focus on our main characters, Sylvie and Dominique. So Sylvie was a contestant on a cooking show called Operation Cake, which Dominique was a judge on. He didn't like her because she was very cutesy and sprinkles and sparkles and unicorns, and he just hated the stuff that she made because he's a very serious, straight-laced bloke and you must have boring white cakes. She ends up getting booted off the show. It's 4 years later and her business is going really well, and she gets offered to be a judge on this season of Operation Cake, which is what I thought this book was going to be about. But the Operation Cake stuff was so minimal in the grand scheme of this story that I don't really know why we bothered to use it as a plot device to bring them together, because there are other ways to bring them together, because literally Dominique and Sylvie's cake stores are across the road from one another. So we didn't need to bring into the Operation Cake except to say that's how she started out, to give a bit of context. But I didn't feel like it was necessary. It felt pointless because then the main sort of plot line that they also had running in is that one of the princesses in the royal family is engaged and she's getting married, and these two end up competing to get the contract contract to bake the wedding cake. And we have this whole entire plotline where we're looking at her uncle and his involvement because they were really close. And then there's also like, we're talking about the uncle's love life and finding this missing woman. And it all just felt really unnecessary. And I feel like we should have picked one plot line and focused on it. And I just felt like it was not believable. It was unrealistic and it was unnecessary. I also strongly disliked how long the chapters were in this book. They went on forever. I ended up listening to the audiobook and one chapter in the audiobook was 50 minutes or longer. That is unnecessary. Really kind of struggled to get through it, and this book was kind of what stuffed me up in the month for being able to get to 10 books. I don't recommend this one, and I don't really have an interest in picking up any of Lucy Parker's other novels. This is the first one of hers I've read. Book 7 was The Young Elites by Mary Lou. I also rated this one 2.5 stars. I really struggled with this book and listened to maybe nearly half of it via audiobook as a way to just get through it. When I started reading this one, I was also a little bit sick at the time. I do just think that the problem is the book, the plotline, the characters, and also I'm just not a fan of Mary Lou as an author. So we focused on our main character, Adelina. There was a blood fever that went through their country. Any adults that got the blood fever were killed. If children survived, they usually were given some sort of physical change to themselves to label them as being a malfedo. So for example, Adelina had her eye removed because it was really swollen. Malfedos are very highly mistreated in society and are also being just murdered for the sake of it, because there is also this other group referred to as young elites who are malfedos with special powers and abilities who are kind of stuffing things around for the king, which is fair enough because he's, you know, cool with them being murdered and stuff. And Adelina ends up being accused of murdering her father. When they are trying to execute her, she ends up getting saved by the young elites and ends up being trained by them. And I just found it really dull. It didn't engage me. It didn't interest me. I didn't care for the characters, and the inner monologues were annoying, and I skim read it, had to listen to the audiobook. But honestly, it was not an enjoyable experience for me, and I am going to continue on with the series just because I don't like to DNF books. But yeah, this was a 2.5 star for me. And then the 8th and final book that I read in August was The Fiance Dilemma by Eleanor R. Mass. Now this is her most recent novel. It does also continue on with The Long Game, which I didn't realize when I picked this up. It actually took me like a couple chapters to realize that Josephine, who is our main character, is like the half sister of Adeline, who is the main character in The Long Game. But I eventually got there, so it's fine. So we focus on her. It's been revealed to the world that she is the love child of, I think the father's called Andrew. He's a high up in like a soccer football club. He was like the owner of it, but I think he's since sold it. Now the world knows about Josephine, and he sends basically a PR person because he's writing a book to make sure that she's not going to embarrass him essentially. And she has been engaged like 4 or 5 times at this point. Sometimes she just puts the engagement rings back on to wear them, and when the publicist rocks up, she's wearing the engagement ring and they go, "Oh, you're engaged, excellent. Having a wedding, having your father come back into your life is going to be a really great way for you guys to reconnect. Dad will pay for it, we'll have photo opportunities." And she panics and doesn't have the heart to tell this woman because she feels really stupid that she was caught wearing the ring, that she's not actually engaged. And what happens is that Adeline's best friend Matthew happens to be walking past. She says that he's her fiance, so they have to pretend to be engaged and go through with this whole production knowing that they're not together, but obviously they do have feelings for one another, and it does develop. I rated this one also 3.5 stars. I just struggled to read it. I didn't really like connect with the story. It sounded really fun and interesting, and I was very much excited for it. I did prefer it to The Long Game. I know I rated The Long Game higher originally, but it is better than The Long Game. I'm just trying to be a bit more honest with my ratings. It was an okay read. That's all I really have to say about it, to be honest. I didn't really care for it, and it's not going to stick with me. Alrighty guys, so they are the 8 books that I did read in the month of August. So now we will quickly just run through, I guess, my statistics. I did only read 1 book off the 24 books that I want to read in 2024, which was A King of Battle and Blood. So it does mean that I have 6 books left on this challenge. In the book series that I want to read in 2024, I only read 1 book off this challenge, which was the Young Elites, but I did start Heart of Flames. So it does mean that I just have the Heart of Flames to finish, Wings of Shadow, which will be the Crown of Feathers duology done. And then with the Young Elites series, I just have to read The Rose Society and The Midnight Star. And then I have to read all 3 books in the Slammed trilogy, which is Slammed, Point of Retreat, and This Girl. So I started the month off with 95 books. I read 8, but I purchased 6, which means that my TBR count is at 93. I did not tick anything off my Taylor Swift Eras reading challenge this month. And then for the Speak Now Taylor's Version challenge, I also didn't tick anything off of it. So yeah, all 8 of my books were physical, but I did read 2 also via audiobook, and I did read 28 days out of the month. That is the August reading wrap up done. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you next week for another one. Bye.